It was winter 2012, and I was 19 at the time. I was working at a petrol station in an average-sized town in England. It was an okay job, and good money for someone who was just in college at the time. So while my friends were getting drunk and having fun, I was in a petrol station, serving taxi drivers and occasional drunks. Anyway, back to the story. It started off like any other night. Serving people, clean up, stock the shelves, and do the average night shift work. Since it was winter, the night was really dark, and you could only see faint outlines of people walking back and forth even with the street lights. The place where I worked was situated across the road from a pub and an alley running beside it that led to a housing estate. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, I just finished up cleaning up a set of shelves and noticed a figure standing in the alley, just out of the light, but just enough to hide its face, but you can make out its clothing. I initially brushed it off as somebody waiting for a taxi, as it seemed harmless enough. I sat down in my chair behind the counter and looked at my phone and played some games for a bit. When I looked up, it was 5 a.m. and he was still there, waiting, watching me. To make my situation worse, after 5, there was hardly any traffic or passerbys. I had the gut feeling that he had some harmful intent. I was safe, however, as I was locked in till morning. I stared back in a trance, trying to keep an eye on whatever he would do next. After a while, I needed to use the toilet, so I went, and came back thinking that he might have walked off, but he didn't. He was still there. I then decided to not do my last job until my coworker came in to start their shift, as my last job was to take out the fire extinguishers and sand buckets. It got to about 6 a.m., and the figure faded back into the alley, and I didn't see him for the rest of my shift. When my coworker arrived, it was still dark, and I usually walked the 10 minutes back home, but I got a taxi home after that shift. I felt that the guy could be anywhere, still watching me. I told my coworkers and family members about the experience, and they said they personally haven't experienced anything like it, and wouldn't like to either. I was nervous when doing my shifts from then on out, feeling as soon as I would let my guard down, he would strike. But thankfully, nothing else ever happened, and I quit the following summer to go to university. This happened to me about a week ago. I live in a small town comprised of farmers, oil workers, and natives. And in this small town, we have a convenience store that's part of a larger chain, found only in my country. I got a job there as a cashier last month and started to work in this particular store. Now, I hate to be stereotypical or racist, but the native populace here, especially men, can be really shitty, especially towards women, including myself. I will tell you now that I'm Caucasian and I'm an 18-year-old female who's around 5'6", and I have ASD, so social situations, the ones I get into at least, are sometimes bizarre for both parties, since I have little idea what the proper cues and facial expressions are. However, working the register, I have to be quick, so there's little room for interactions, which suits me just fine. Now I'll also note that I'm a little chubby, and our uniforms have me dressed modestly, so in no way was I asking for any sort of attention. I started with 3 native guys who would come in, wanting to buy booze and lottery tickets and cigarettes. Since I'm of legal age in my country, I'm allowed to serve them, and I often do, with a quick check of their driver's license for ID. That's how I know their names. I'm just going to use nicknames. So there was Slim, Shorty, and String Bean. Slim was of course slim and tall, taller than me at about 6'4". He had a kind of machete appearance to him. And then there was Shorty, who was just a little over my height and balding, and was fatter than me. And String Bean, who was skinny. I was surprised he wasn't malnourished, and he was the oldest out of them, with gray hair. I first met them 2 days into my job, and after they got their stuff and they paid, String Bean winked at me and said, "With a pretty white girl like you behind the counter, we'll have to drop by more often." I thought he was just complimenting me, and I smiled. I had an elderly native neighbor who would talk to me if we were outside, and sometimes mow some of the lawn for me and my mother. So I was used to the kinder ones who didn't fit the stereotype. Every day afterwards, the 3 men would come in, and when they saw me working, and buy either a pack of cigarettes, a lottery ticket, or booze, or all 3. After I rang them up, they'd stay in the store. As my job, I'd have to watch them and make sure they didn't shoplift, but they'd hang out near the ice cream and watch me too. I got instantly creeped out by this, but I tried not to show it. I just made up excuses in my head and just went back to work. One day, the trio of men stuck around longer than expected, and then one asked, "Ever had a boyfriend, girlie?" "I have a girlfriend, actually," I told them. "Oh Lord, I shouldn't have. I'm in a long-distance relationship with her, so luckily she doesn't live in the town or anywhere nearby." The load of things that they said and asked me were just disgusting. I'm not even going to get into detail. Lucky me. At times, I can recognize when a conversation goes sour, and this was blatantly one of them. I told them, "You have no right to ask that stuff. It's personal and none of your damn business." Shorty scowled and then said, "I remember this clearly. Watch your mouth or you're going to find something shoved in it." That's when I lost it and ordered them out, or I was going to call the police. I should have just called them on the spot. Since I work in the store alone, I often had time to go back and do a few extra jobs. I went in the back on a really slow evening to organize some food shipments. However, I heard the buzzer ring and walked out. There was String Bean, Shorty, and Slim, all three holding knives. When they saw me, they charged, and I closed and locked the door. And then I remembered I had my cell phone behind the counter and ended up having a bad meltdown. While locked in there, the three men banged on the door, threatening with sexual violence against me before they finally gave up. Once I could think straight, again, I got up, entered the store, and saw that they were gone. I called the police, and they came and took my statement, reviewed the footage, and luckily caught the three men. I gave their names too, and within an hour, they caught the three and charged them. They're currently awaiting trial, and I no longer work shifts alone unless it's in the afternoon. I'm glad that these creeps were caught, and justice was served instantly, because seriously, the way that they were talking that night, I probably would have been found dead, and I'm thankful that I got lucky and didn't get hurt. So this happened to me when I was 19, working my second job. I worked at a Chipotle, and one of my closing duties as a cashier was cleaning the dining area as well as the restrooms. I had been on the job for a half a year, and I honestly preferred the closing shifts because it was far more relaxing than the morning rush. It was in the last 40 minutes before closing, and we had a small cluster of customers come in. One man in particular, I would say, was a frequent customer. He would come in every other weekend. I'm terrible at names, but he seemed to have remembered my name after meeting just once. Now I always have a happy to help smile on, but he always had the habit of making my smile drop. It's not that he would say anything bad in particular, he just had a creepy way about him. On this particular night, he dined in, while everyone else in the small cluster of people went out. He sat at a circled table and facing my register and watched me. Every time I would look up, I would catch him staring. He didn't even bother pretending that he wasn't. He would just lock eyes with me until I would step back just to get away from his peering eyes. Thankfully, he had 10 more minutes, and it looked like no one else was coming, so we started the closing duties early. My manager wanted me to clean the bathrooms, since he didn't want me to rush the creepy onlooker. I was glad to, and went to grab the mop bucket and solution to scrub the restroom. Now the restrooms were right around the corner, a few feet from the register. The bad thing was that our fountain drink blocked the view of it, so we could never tell who was coming or going to the bathroom. I mention this because what happened next is what took my night from creepy to completely disgusting. As I went and cleaned out the female restroom pretty quickly, I thought I heard the door open, but I didn't hear the clunk of the door closing, so I thought I was hearing things. The men's restroom always required a lot more attention, so I didn't think much of it and rushed in there quickly. What I saw made me blink in disbelief. There, standing by the urinal, facing the entrance of the door, he had everything showing, and he was even playing with it. It was the guy from the dining area, with this disgusting look on his face, and he tried taking a step forward towards me. I was horrified, and all that came out loudly was, "Why?" It was really loud, which must have freaked him out because he tucked it quickly into his pants. I should have blocked him, but as he rushed me, I stepped back and ran towards my register area, swearing and trembling. When the guys cleaning the grill noticed They came out and asked what was wrong, and I started bawling. They got my manager, and he wrote down the incident in his notes. After that, I got sent home. I would love to say that they caught the son of a bitch, but they didn't. He got away with flashing me and made me extremely paranoid about public restrooms. I'm the type of person that dwells on that stuff, and I still can't stop myself from wondering if he had hid, could he have very well assaulted me? I hate to even think about it.